not everyone is your best target market. So you have to, in my mind, product differentiate yourself, which means letting people know who you are and letting them be attracted to you.
Hello and welcome to Brand Tuned, the only podcast on branding that includes fundamentals like copyright, trademarks and IP that are core to creating and owning a brand that's unique to you. I'm Shireen Smith, lawyer, brand strategist and curious business owner, keen to discover the secrets of effective brand building. My guest today is Mary Kelly, who spent 25 years in the Navy before focusing on her current business of supporting corporate profit growth. Mary, welcome to the Brand Tune podcast. Hello.
Good morning. I'm excited to be with you today.
Great. Do tell us a bit more about what prompted your change of background, your career in terms of why did you move from the Navy to what you're now doing?
So I did, as you said, 25 years on active duty in the Navy. I was mostly in Asia, where I was an intel officer, an intelligence officer for several years. And then as you get more senior, you get put into more positions of increased responsibility. So I was part of a team that ran the base Pearl Harbor. I ran the base called Barbers Point. I was an HR director. I was a chief of police. I ran a pay and personnel office, and I was a professor back at our Naval Academy as well. And in that time, you get to, and I do think it's a privilege, you get to run big organizations. So billion-dollar budgets and, thousands of people and shipyards and big things. And when I retired out of the Navy, I realized that what I really liked to do, I love being a professor, but what I really liked to do was get in and do logistical work. So that helped a lot. And then I realized that in the civilian business world, a lot of logistics are problematic for many organizations. So I started talking about that, and that evolved into a series of about 15 books. And then this is what I get to do now.
15 books. Wow, that's quite something. I gather you had a PhD. Is that before you went to the Navy? Or?
No, I went to the Naval Academy where you do get a bachelor's degree. My bachelor's, technically we all graduate as engineers. I'm a terrible engineer. So I went on and got a couple master's degrees when I was on active duty. I would go to school on nights and weekends. I don't sleep very much, which is quite handy.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe 4 hours a night. So it's really handy. It gives you a few more hours a day to work and do things. And I just kept going to school. I just stayed in graduate school. And wherever I was stationed, I just tried to pick up a class or two here and there. So I do have a PhD in economics. And then I've got another one, and that's ABD. It's all but dissertation in political science as well. But nobody cares about that.
Wow, so you've got a real love of learning. I share that with you. It's really wonderful just to learn more, isn't it, about how things work.
I could not agree with you more. I think in school, you have to go to school. Of course, it's compulsory, and that takes some of the fun out of it. And then when you get to be an adult and you realize, wow, there's so much more to learn, and then you just start, it does become addicting, kind of like chips. You just can't eat one.
So have you always needed this little sleep or?
Pretty much, yes. Even when I was a child, my poor parents, I was never that child at 2 who would nap. No, it just didn't happen. No. And the military, of course, loves it when you don't sleep because, of course, as you know, ships at sea, you don't stop in the middle of the ocean because it's Saturday, or, you just don't stop. So you run on low sleep for a lot of years. And I think I just got used to it. I'm always surprised when I sleep more than 4 or 5 hours because I'm like, oh, well, that was lovely, wasn't it? And then get to work.
When did you start your business then? I mean, what was involved for you?
That's kind of a funny question. I was back teaching at the Naval Academy. I was a professor. Many times and your schools are the same way, your military is the same way. People will call up and say, hey, we'd like the admiral or the general to come and talk to our organization or the Boy Scout Jamboree or this civic group, the Rotary Club, whatever. Well, our admiral at the time did not like public speaking at all. Not at all. Like, no, not at all. And there were a handful of us, about 20 of us, that if somebody called up and said, "Hey, we want the admiral," they'd say, "Oh, you get, Joe or Bob or Mary or whoever." And they would usually say, "But we don't want Joe or Bob or Mary. We want the admiral. Of course we want the admiral." And they're like, "Well, you kind of don't have a choice. You get a choice of these three people." So I was never somebody's first choice, and sometimes not even their second or third choice. But then I would show up, and now we get to talk to a group of business people or a motivational group or a philanthropic group. And then the requests came in more and more often for me. And then some of those people who saw me talk then said, "Hey, we'd like you to do this, in a year." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be a civilian in a year." And they were like, "Well, yeah." I went, "Oh, this is a thing." And it kind of evolved from there. I had written two leadership books or been co-authored on two leadership books for the Navy, for the leadership program at the Naval Academy. And then it's the same thing. Once you write one book, you kind of just keep going.
Mm.
And that evolved into another book. So I pretty much started the business the day I retired because I already had people who said, "We would like you to come talk to our business or talk to our people or do this." And then that evolved into more speaking, public speaking. And I just thought, "Oh, this must be normal." And again, one of the great things about ignorance is when you don't know any better, you don't know that it's not how most people do it. And and again, if you think about it too hard, you'll stop yourself from doing it. And I didn't think that hard about it. I just thought, "Oh, okay, this must be something people do." Well, I found out it's supposed to be a whole lot harder, but I got very, very lucky early on because again, I had clients already built in who had me booked. And then when I started joining things like the National Speakers Association and other associations that help you turn speaking and consulting and advising into a business, I realized that a lot of people had it much worse than I did starting out when you start from scratch. And so I mostly started from scratch, but maybe a little bit above scratch, I would say.
So, how did you manage to excel at speaking right from the beginning?
If you ask my parents, they will say I've been talking since the day I was born, and it's not that far off. I was always getting into trouble in school for speaking out of turn, for not raising my hand, for trying to be funny. Teachers, I went to Catholic schools, and many of those teachers did not find me humorous in any way, not at all, not funny at all. I was constantly getting into trouble. And then in the Navy, I had to do a lot of briefings. And again, I was stationed mostly in Asia. And so we'd have these briefings. It was the first Gulf War, second Gulf War. I mean, very serious things. And I would always try to make it a little bit funny. And they did not find that, again, funny at all. Lieutenant Kelly, that is not funny. Ensign Kelly, that is not funny. Sit down, Lieutenant Kelly. I'm like, "Oh, but everybody's so boring." So partly it was, I would like to say rebellion. It wasn't really rebellion. I was just trying to make things a little bit better. And I found out that that was not my target audience. My target audience was a whole different audience. So now when I talk about business progress and leadership and economics, I try to be a little bit funny. Some people think it's funny. Again, there's probably some people who don't. But I was very fortunate that I never experienced stage fright. I don't get that. I always feel sorry for people when they will come to me and say, "My boss says I need to be better at public speaking." And I just say, why? Why do you need to be great at public speaking? For 96% or whatever the population number is of the people who hate public speaking. And there's a lot of lawyers that don't like to go to trial because they don't want to do the speaking in front of other people, as you know.
Mm.
And why do we have to make them do this? It gives them a physiological response. They get sweaty, their hands get sweaty, their stomach is sick for days and weeks the night before. They shake, they tremble, they're nervous. I mean, it's a fear. Why do we make people do that when there's people like me out there who love it? Nobody ever tells me, you should really do your own electrical work in your own house. Yeah, you could be electrocuted, but really you should get better at that. No, nobody says that. So I think leaving the speaking to people who love it is great. And there's some of us out there, we're a little strange, I get it, but we love doing it. And for those of us, it's easy, it's fun. I would rather be speaking on a stage than anywhere else. And I don't like to lie on the beach. I'd rather speak on a stage than be on vacation.
Wow, that's amazing. So, how did you manage to get paid work from your speaking?
Such a great question. Uh So in the beginning, of course, when I'm in uniform, when I was on active duty, of course, you don't get paid because you're a civil servant. You do not take honorariums when you're not on active duty. And then some people were very decent. And there was a professional speaker at one event. He came up to me afterwards. He was about 20 years older than me, I think, and kind of a gruff voice. And he had a hat on, that was kind of his whole deal. And he said, "Hey, kid, you're pretty good at this. And I'm in uniform and I'm a commander. I mean, it's not like I'm a child exactly. And I'm all polite. I'm, "Oh, yes, sir. That's so nice of you. And thank you." I said, "Well, you're pretty good too." And he looks at me like I'm an idiot because I did not know this was a thing. And he said, "Well, I should. I'm a professional." I said, "A professional what?" And he said, "A professional speaker." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "It means I got paid." I'm like, "Wait, what?" So he said, "Yeah, they put me up for a couple nights at this hotel." I'm like, "Oh, they didn't pay for my parking." He said, "And they took me to dinner last night at a really nice restaurant." I'm like, "Oh, um, I think I ate some dried meat, maybe some toast." And then he said, "Yeah." And then they gave me this check. And I said, "Wow, one of us is doing this wrong." Now, I'm still on active duty at the time, but I had this realization when I thought, oh, this is actually something you can do. So I did what anybody does starting a business. You get a website, you grab a logo, and you start populating the website with content. And I still think that is a viable way to start any business is grab a
Mm,
website, even if it's just a blog website, and populate it with content that people will find interesting. And I didn't know what people would find interesting necessarily, but I knew what people liked when I spoke. And I did remember thinking, wow, some of the stuff that I'm saying might actually be helpful later. So I recorded all those early speeches. And again, I think that's helpful when you're trying to get better. And listening to your own self-talk, oh, so painful, so terrible. And one of my worst things is when I saw myself on video, I was like, oh, I'm horrible. I hate this. This is awful. But you look at it and all of a sudden you realize I can get better there. I can get better there. I can get better there. And many people will start out and say, well, I'll ask somebody else to tell me where I can get better, but they've never looked at their own stuff to figure out first where they can get better. And while those first early months were painful, watching myself and listening to myself to try to get better. And as I got better, I would transcribe my own speeches and rewrite them. And I don't speak from a script. I never have. And I
mm,
do think it helps that I taught at the Naval Academy for 4 years. I taught also at the Air Force Academy in the United States as a civilian for 10 years. And then I also taught as a civilian professor for another university for 20 years. So I do think that that experience helped me with being able to convey information in a way that's textured every 3 to 5 minutes. So it's slightly different. You change your tone, you change your speed, you change your story, all of that to keep students interested. There's certainly some lessons there that I think can be applied. But for starting a business, you just start. And I know that sounds very basic, but I just made a list of, all right, what do I need to start a business? I need clients. How do I get clients? People need to know who I am. How do I do that? Well, you have to create a marketing plan. Well, what do you do? So I put together a one-page business plan. And it's very simple. It's the executive summary. What do I do? I provide, I increase, I help, what do I do? What product or service do I offer? And to whom? Many people, I think, make the mistake early on that they think everyone is their target market. That is not true.
mm,
The more specific you can be about your target market, the better. In the early years, I mostly focused on people who liked military backgrounds and stories because that was what I had. And then as I built my businesses, I have a few. As I built my businesses, it wasn't that I wasn't comfortable talking about business in the early years. It just seemed like a more of a natural fit to talk more about the military. And people were very interested in the military back in 2008, 2009, partly because we were in a recession and people just wanted something other than business. So I think that helped me as well in the beginning. But I also started the business during the absolute depths of our recession in 2008. And again, I didn't know any better. When you don't know any better, you don't have to worry about what other people did. I didn't know what other people were doing. So this is where I say ignorance truly is bliss. And if you're thinking about starting a business, just start. And on this 5-page business plan, it also talks about how I'm going to be profitable. One sentence, I can make profit if I profit, not revenue. Many people don't
mm.
understand the difference. You can make money, but if your costs are way more than your revenues, you're not operating at a profit. So that's not helpful. And then what do you do well and what do you need to outsource? Even from the very beginning, I knew that if this was going to work, I was going to need an assistant to help me do what I do best, and I needed to let my assistant do the things that she does best. And that has worked out remarkably well. And then marketing, putting together that marketing plan, again, targeting to the people who best resonate with your message. And then from there, you get referrals. It took me probably 8 years. My biggest mistake was not building a list of people who'd been in my audience. Number one, probably my biggest mistake. One of my second mistakes was thinking that when people said, "Wow, we want to hire you," that meant they were going to hire you. How naive is
Mm.
that? That's just dumb. I kind of thought, "Oh, you like me, therefore you're going to call me." And this is a message I have for people today, and that is, business is not dating. Business is not, "Oh, he likes me, he's going to call me. Oh, she likes me, she's going to call me." No, it is your job to stay top of mind with your clients. It is your job to remind them of what it is you do. It is your job to keep in touch with them. It is not your client's job to keep in touch with you. And I made that mistake for, years, I would say. And then I would also say that I am terrible at asking for referrals. When somebody says, "Wow, this was great. This was exactly what our people needed. We love the book. We love the workbook. We love this exercise," whatever. I did not ask for either a written testimonial, a video testimonial, or a referral. And I confess I'm still quite bad at that now.
A short break now to thank our sponsors, As Rights International, who provide trademark registration, copyright services, and more. Download a copy of its 7 Costly Mistakes with your business and brand and find out how to create an effective brand. Details are in the show notes. How did you target customers? You say you did logistics, or you specialize in logistics. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. How did you know which clients have problems with logistics?
That's such a good question, is who do you want to work with? When you think about the future of your business, regardless of whether or not you cut hair, whether or not you deliver pizza, whatever it is you do, who do you want to work with? And the people I work best with are people who kind of think in a linear fashion. So the finance industry, the legal industry, the medical industry, insurance, these are people who think very linear, in a linear pattern. And those people tend to resonate well with my numerical background, the data. When I talk to people now, it tends to be data driven, but focused on them. And those are people who really like that. So that helped me a good bit. There's certain groups that probably could use what I do, but they are not the easiest fit for what I do. So I gravitated toward the people who think most like me. And by that, I'm a firm believer that if you run a business, you need to hire people who are not like you. You need to hire people who think differently from you, and you need to be prompted in different ways from people who are not like you. But when it comes time to a conference room of 5,000 people who are insurance brokers, it is very easy for me to relate to them on their level, address their challenges, understand what they're going through, because I know the numbers they're looking at. I understand the challenges for each individual office. And so I think for us, when you have a business, you have to, again, think about who you want to work with, who best resonates with your message, and who you can best help. So having said that, I also get to work with some very in the beginning, I kind of targeted people who I thought might most resonate with my message. So people who like the military, people who were in sort of linear fields, like I mentioned. But then as things grew, it expanded to technology and school administration and government officials and just everywhere. So we think our message, and this is one thing that I think is a limiting factor for many people. We think we know who's going to best resonate with our message, and sometimes we're absolutely wrong. Sometimes I get called from a group. I'm like, wow, I would not have thought in a million years that you would want what it is I do. And then they will surprise me, and I would never have marketed to you. So I think sometimes Our audience and the needs of the marketplace will surprise us. I do think we have to be attentive to that and listen when there's opportunity.
It's still quite difficult, though. I mean, like lawyers, there are so many lawyers. How do you identify the ones who are going to resonate with your message? How did you go about doing that?
That's where it's all about product differentiation. And like a lawyer, when people reject you, when they say, I'm not going to hire you, they're rejecting you as a person. So somebody said, well, but how is that true? I said, it's the same with me. When somebody doesn't hire me for their event or they don't hire me to be their corporate advisor, they are outright rejecting me. It's not my product. It's not anything else. It is me. And while that sounds hurtful, it's also true. So, okay, that you have to be in a place where in your head where that's okay. Not everyone is your best target market. So you have to, in my mind, product differentiate yourself, which means letting people know who you are and letting them be attracted to you for that. So let's say you specialize in estate planning.
Mm.
It's easy then to differentiate yourself as an estate planning counselor or attorney than another kind of attorney. And you do that by articles on your website or and just saying, I love helping people with this, or this is my passion, or this person said, instead of just saying, hey, Sally was a great lawyer for me, it's Sally was a great estate planning attorney for our family, helping us sift through these difficult situations. And you put that on your website as testimonials, as question and answers, as blogs, as articles, so that people differentiate you from everybody else. People want to work with specialists. And again, this is where many people, and I certainly made all these mistakes, we try to be attractive to everyone, hoping that that shotgun approach for marketing is going to work. And we are mostly wrong. When you have a medical problem and it requires something very specialized, like brain surgery, you don't want to go to a general practitioner. You want to go to a specialist. You want to go to the brain surgeon. And you want someone who everybody else in the field says, wow, that's the brain surgeon. If I'm a doctor and if I needed brain surgery, I would go to that doctor. That's what you want. You want to be that person who is noted in your field, differentiated in your field, and respected by your peers. And that takes social proof, both on your website and by external sources. So making sure that your online presence shows what it is you do and differentiates you from other people and other parts of the profession, I think is critical. Number two, establishing yourself as the expert, not just an expert, but the expert. If you've got a difficult estate planning situation, I just use estate planning because it's an easy example, in Manchester, are you the estate planning attorney in Manchester that everyone goes to because you are considered the best in this area in your field? You don't have to be the world's greatest. You just need to be the best in your pond. And that begs the question, do you want to be a small fish in a big pond or the big fish in a small pond? And I would say be the big fish in the small pond. Be the one people know, that's the person I call, that there's not that question. And you can do that by, let's say you don't want to write a lot of articles. Lawyers tend to be very good at writing. But let's say you're not a big writer, you don't know how to start. You ask 5 people, what do you need when you think about hiring an estate planning attorney? And they say, well, I want these 5 things. So then you can make a question and answer of, why should people hire me? And here's the question, here's the answer, here's the question, here's the answer. So ask your friends, hey, why would you hire a lawyer for any reason at all? And then listen to the answer and then craft the answer and put that on your website and then make it searchable. Many people, again, don't know so many aspects of the law. And that, of course, is your business. And you can help them. Now, you can't give legal advice that would get you into trouble, but you can say, hey, here's something that was just passed that people need to know. Or many people make this mistake in this situation because, or something I've seen more recently is, when you're differentiating yourself in the marketplace, I think you have to be educational. I think you have to be informative. And I think you have to be a little bit entertaining. And this is why if you are, say, a huge animal lover and you have cats or dogs or llamas or sheep or whatever you have, And you can incorporate that on your website. And some people will say, oh, that's not terribly professional. But people will remember you if you're the lawyer with the dog on your website. They may not remember your name, but they will remember who you are. And that's part of it, is staying, again, top of mind. I also know that many lawyers don't reach out to their clients. They say, well, when they need me, they'll call me. Well, that's awfully passive. That's awfully that's not really helpful. And once I talk to my lawyer groups and I say, here's the issue. If you don't reach out to them and tell them, hey, this could be a problem for you later on, let me help you now. Then when it is a problem, it's going to cost them a lot more money. Isn't that true? And they say, well, yes. I said, well, then wouldn't it be best for them if you approach them now, saving them, thousands of pounds later? Wouldn't that be helpful? They said, well, yes, but and my lawyer said, but I don't want to be pushy. Wait a second. Your job is to watch out for your clients. And if this is really watching out for your clients, then take that action, reach out to them, offer a consultation, and just say, hey, I thought you might want to be aware of this part of the law that pertains to you and could potentially cost you a lot of money later if you don't take this right action. Many times lawyers, I think, don't respond until they're called. And I think they can be a little bit more proactive, especially if you're just starting out, especially if you are new in your practice and new to the firm and your job is to maybe try to get clients. Look at who you best work with and then target that group on the ways you can best be helpful.
Essentially, I see that you branded yourself as productive leaders. So, were you targeting companies that wanted leadership training primarily?
Well, yes and no. I needed a website and I needed a URL. And again, when I was in the military, I was not allowed to have any social media. So I came late to the social media and the online party. And Productive Leaders was available. And I thought, well, that's got to be a good name. It's productive because who wants an unproductive leader? And it's got the word leaders in the title. Boom, got it. So it started out that way. I tried a few other names that didn't really say anything about what it is I did. But I'm wild about productivity. I've created a whole series of productivity worksheets. I have a daily productivity sheet I do each and every day of my life. It's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is double check that productivity worksheet. And it's outlined by the actions you need to take as a business person. And this, again, I think is where many professionals, my doctors, my lawyers, my finance people, they don't always treat their business like a business. And I treat every day like a business. We're only as good as our next paying client. And that drives my day. So every single day I wake up and I look at my productivity sheet, which has, of course, the date, and I put in the day. This is Wednesday. And then it has all the calls I need to make for the day and my follow up from maybe the past few days or anything I need to follow up with in the future. And then my specific to do items, and then appointments or meetings, the times. And then my short-term goal for the day. I confess I'm not always very good at that. And then at the very bottom, I'm supposed to fill out today's accomplishments, which I almost never do because I'm already moving on to the next day. I'm personally not very good at celebrating the wins, but I tell other people it's a good idea. And every single day I look at it, and one of the best pieces of advice was from a guy named John, and he said, wake up every day and do the thing that's going to make you money. And at first I resisted that. I said, no, I want to do the thing that's going to change the world and help other people and give and serve and all that stuff. And he says, but if you don't make money, you're not going to be in business long. And I thought, oh yeah, that's quite a good point, isn't it? So that's what I do each and every day. And then, because all of us are this way, I have a weekly productivity sheet as well. And that is the magic there is I've got all the tasks I need to accomplish for the week, but then it's also got the due dates and then the priority. And then the magic is I break it down into time in minutes because we all have things we don't want to do. We procrastinate like everybody does. We procrastinate. So when you break it down in time in minutes, all of a sudden you look at your task list and you think, oh, I don't want to do that. But then you look at the time in minutes and it says 14 minutes. And you're like, all right, I can do anything for 14 minutes. And that's kind of the thought process. It's the anti-procrastination sheet. And I'd love to, can I share some of these resources with you? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. If you send them, we'll add them to the show notes. That would be great.
Beautiful. Yep, I will send you a link which has some brilliant worksheets I use all the time for building business, and it works for lawyers, it works for my practitioners, and it's things like the 5-minute business plan, the one-page business plan. And part of that clarity is in the one-page 5-minute the 5-minute business plan, vision plan, a focus plan, a productivity plan, because it's very easy, especially now with all the uncertainty in the world, and 2020 wound up being such a crazy year for
Mm.
so many people, and people are sad and discouraged and uncertain. This is when we need business leadership more than ever. We need people who are going to step up. And some of my leaders say, but I don't know what to do. And I say, but you do know what to do. You just haven't clarified what you need to do. So these one-page worksheets are designed to help. And I'm talking very senior people who also use these, as well as some very small businesses, my solopreneurs, mom and pop stores. Because it's easy to get distracted. It is easy to watch the media, watch the news, watch social media, and be discouraged about the state of the world, the state of the country, the state of fill in the blank. It is easy to get discouraged when you don't have clients coming through the door. So we've got to be crystal clear about everything we do and make sure that we are on the right track to set things in motion to go forward. And we need to have a system where we walk into the office in the morning, and let's say we don't have clients, or we're trying to build clients. For many people, they just sit there and look at the telephone waiting for it to ring, or they look at their email and they hope somebody sends them business. Hope is not a very good strategy. Hope doesn't make things happen. It's nice to have, but it's not going to drive your business. So the idea is, I thought, well, what if I could make it easier for my business leaders by narrowing the focus, making it easier for people to get things done and take the right action that's going to build their business.
Yeah, so it's going to be very useful to have those resources on the website. So finally, just to wrap up, which brand do you particularly admire and why?
Branding is so tricky because it has to evolve with the times. And there's certain brands that are so easily recognizable that everybody knows what it is they're getting, and that's helpful. So when you look at some of the icons of branding, and you have them in the UK as well, there's the real icons. Certain grocery stores, you know exactly what you're going to get and what's available. I think that can be very helpful. A brand is, in my mind, the promise of a promise. We are promising that we're going to have this type of good or service or food available. Food brands are easy to recognize. Dunkin' Donuts and Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC. You know what you're going to get when you walk in the door. McDonald's. You know what you're going to get. Now it may not be your preference, but you know when you walk in what it is you're going to get. And if you walk in and it's not consistent, then it's kind of like a broken promise. So a brand to me is something that is identifiable. It allows people to quickly relate what it is you provide. And it's a promise for what you're going to deliver once they walk through your doors or once they call you. So your brand needs to be something, again, recognizable, but also show what it is you do. And this, I think, is where creativity comes into play. That if you have a very creative brand that markets you well, that shows what you do, that's fantastic. It's great. Some people are so worried about not being considered serious, especially in very serious jobs like the legal world, that they don't brand themselves. And as a result, everybody looks like plain vanilla. And then it makes it harder to differentiate yourself. I'm not sure if that was the answer to your question.
Yeah, that's very useful comment to end on. So thank you very much, Mary, for appearing on the podcast.
Oh, I'm so delighted to hear from you this morning. Thank you so kindly. It's been my honor.
Great. Bye. That's it for this week. Do subscribe to the Brand Tuned newsletter to get weekly updates. I'd also love to get your feedback. Just send me an email to info@brandtune.com. Finally, if you liked the episode, Please do share it with your friends and colleagues and review it on iTunes or whichever platform you use to listen to podcasts. If you leave us a 5-star review, it means more people will listen and we can spread the word much more quickly about the podcast. Thank you and bye for now.